Resolution number 21-1050, in the matter of adjourning out of executive session.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and second, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-1050. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-1051, public hearing for the consideration of the Evans number 354 drainage improvement petition filed by, that should say, Mr. McNeilis and others.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-1051. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 21-1052, in the matter of approving for a specific occurrence a suspension of Rule 3 speaker registration, Rule 4 limitations, and Rule 7 public comment procedure from the rules governing public comment before the Board of County Commissioners of Delaware County, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 21-1052. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Good morning, everyone. Got a good crowd today. This is for the Evans number 354 drainage improvement petition here on this date, Thursday, October 28th. I'm going to kind of just read the ground rules that we'll be following today, so we're all on the same page and we'll all kind of know where we're headed. This is the first hearing for the consideration of the Evans number 354 drainage improvement petition. There's a sign-in sheet that's circulating the room or is in the back when you came in. We ask that you please sign if you've not done so already. This is how it's going to proceed today. We're going to hear a report from the county engineer and Soil and Water Conservation District, and then we'll take any questions from the board. And those speaking for or against the petition must be either an owner, as identified in section 6131.01 of the revised code, or an attorney speaking on behalf of an owner. We'll hear from all those landowners in favor of the petition first. Then we'll hear from all those landowners opposed to the petition. And during testimony, you'll be asked to take an oath. And we'll continue back and forth. If new information comes up or additional people wish to speak, they will be given that opportunity. We just ask that you not be redundant. Questions from the board will be offered again. And then after listening to the testimony, the report, the engineer, and the board will decide whether to grant the prayer of the petition or to dismiss the petition. These are the factors the board considers in making that decision. Whether the board hereby finds that the proposed improvements is necessary, that it will be conducive to the public welfare, and the board also finds that it is reasonably certain that the cost of the proposed improvements will be less than the benefits. And if the board grants the prayer of the petition, the Delaware County Engineer will proceed with preparation of plans, reports, and individual schedules of assessments for the project. When plans are complete, a final hearing will be set. Notification of the hearing will be given to the landowners, just like it was done here. And then the board will consider the project, whether to move forward or to dismiss it. With that, that's how we're going to proceed. And with that, I will ask the Police, Soil, and Water.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brett Bacon, Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District. I will read the first hearing report into the record and be happy to take any questions the board may have. First hearing report, Evans number 354 watershed drainage petition per ORC 6131, October 28, 2021. This report has been prepared for the preliminary hearing on a drainage improvement petition filed by James McNeilis and Cynthia McNeilis on May 26, 2021. The original petition has been signed by two individuals representing one of the 62 parcels in the watershed. The course and termini of the requested improvements are quoted from the petition as follows. In Delaware County, Harlem Township, within the Evans number 354 watershed and generally following, but not limited to, the course and termini of existing improvements. The following is the nature of work requested as quoted from the petition. To generally improve drainage, both surface and subsurface, to a good and sufficient outlet by replacing, repairing, or altering the existing improvements as required and or creating new surface and subsurface drainage mains or laterals as required by this petition. An amendment to the petition was filed on July 19, 2021 by Ryan and Rebecca King, 15010 Robbins Road. The Commissioners accepted this amendment on August 16, 2021. Petition process. This petition has been submitted to Section 6131 of the Ohio Revised Code, which authorizes the Board of Commissioners to act on behalf of benefited property owners to make drainage improvements. If the Board of Commissioners decides to proceed with the project, the costs related to the improvements in the development of plans, reports, and schedules are assessed to the landowners in the watershed according to the benefit received to their watershed acreage. These special assessments will be added to the property taxes for each property and can be spread over a maximum of a 15-year period. Property owners may also choose to pay their assessment in a lump sum payment prior to placement on their property taxes. Additionally, the improvements will be placed on the Delaware County Drainage Maintenance Program in perpetuity per ORC Section 6137, and the annual maintenance assessment will appear on property tax statements as a special assessment in the same manner as the construction assessments. These annual maintenance assessments are generally in the range of 2 to 5% of the construction assessment. The decision to approve a petition project is a three-step process. First, a viewing of the proposed improvement is conducted for the commissioners to familiarize themselves with the watershed and general conditions. The commissioners conducted the viewing for this project by drone video on August 16, 2021. Next, a preliminary hearing is held to consider the initial feasibility of the proposal. It is this preliminary first hearing that is before us today. If this petition is approved, a final hearing will be conducted to further consider this petition. At that time, final details such as engineering plans and specifications, cost estimates, and a proposed schedule of assessments will be known. Existing conditions. The Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District and Delaware County Engineers Office have made the following observations of the watershed using on-site evaluation and a review of available historic records, aerial photography, topographic mapping, and soils mapping. The Evans No. 354 watershed is approximately 351 acres. The predominant land uses within the watershed are currently agricultural and rural residential. There are also areas of road right-of-way and woods. Improvements have been previously constructed in the watershed utilizing the ORC 6131 petition process in 1912. These improvements consisted of open channel construction and subsurface drain installation. The drainage system does not appear to be functioning at or near optimum capacity due to a lack of comprehensive maintenance and the generally deteriorated condition of the infrastructure. The lack of uniform grading has led to significant ponding in many areas of the watershed, and the subsurface drain system appears to have significant areas of structural failure as observed by sporadic blowouts along its course. These conditions are indicators of an overburdened, unmaintained, and aged drainage infrastructure. While the existing drainage system still provides some degree of drainage benefit, it does not appear to function as a good and sufficient outlet. Estimate of cost factors favorable, unfavorable benefit versus cost. ORC 6131 requires the county engineer to state in a report factors favorable and unfavorable to a proposed project, estimate the cost of the project, and state an opinion as to whether the benefits of the project exceed the cost. The following information is presented for your consideration. Construction estimate. The proposed project would begin on the south side of Fancher Road at the junction of the Evans No. 354 drainage system and the Barnhart Joint County No. 171 drainage system, and extend upstream to the north to create a good and sufficient outlet for those parcels that have signed or amended the petition. Two alternative routings are being proposed for consideration. These will be referred to as the east option and west option. The primary items of work along the entire length of both alternatives would include open channel reconstruction, surface drain shaping and grading, the installation of subsurface drains, the installation of a grade stabilization structure, and blind inlets, brush and vegetation removal, and seeding and mulching of disturbed areas. If the project proceeds to a final hearing, portions of the watershed may be further divided into sections to better define the areas of work and the associated costs and benefits. This level of detail is not determined for the preliminary hearing and is only undertaken if the petition moves forward to a second or final hearing. The cost estimate as presented below reflects the entire requested project area. East option, construction, $224,678. Project administration, survey and engineering, 15% of the construction estimate, $33,701.70. Drainage maintenance, first year startup, 5% of the construction estimate, $11,233.90. Total project estimate for the east option, $269,613.60. West option, construction, $155,924. Project administration, survey and engineering, 15% of the construction estimate, $23,388.60. Drainage maintenance, first year startup, 5% of the construction estimate, $7,796.20. Total project estimate, west option, $187,108.80. Notes: it is important to understand that the above estimates are preliminary and made in the absence of a current detailed topographic survey of the project area. The above estimate does not contain a contingency amount. The amount of necessary contingency would be evaluated as part of the survey and engineering design of the project and added to the estimate presented at the final hearing. Contingency cost is typically estimated at 15 to 20% of the final construction estimate. Should the project fail to be approved at the final hearing, the benefiting landowners, as defined by ORC 6131, may still be responsible for the cost of project administration, survey, and engineering design. Assessments. If the project moves forward to the second hearing, the Ohio Revised Code instructs the county engineer to calculate the assessments to individual property owners based on the benefits received from the improvements for the various properties in the watershed. ORC 6131 states that, quote, uplands that have been removed from their natural state by deforestation, cultivation, artificial drainage, urban development, or other man-made causes shall be considered as benefited by an improvement required to dispose of the accelerated flow of water from the uplands. Benefits are further defined by the ORC as elimination or reduction of damage from flood, removal of water conditions that jeopardize public health, safety, or welfare, and increased value of land resulting from the improvement. It should be noted that property owners are only assessed for those improvements that are located downstream from their properties. No property is assessed for improvements located upstream. The public agencies that own rights-of-way for public roads and other public lands are also assessed for both construction and maintenance costs in the same manner as private property owners. Individual parcel assessments are not calculated for the preliminary hearing and are only calculated if the petition moves forward to a second or final hearing. Factors favorable, unfavorable. Factors favorable to the improvement: improved surface and subsurface drainage in the watershed, improved outlet for subsurface drainage components of household sewage treatment systems and for residential drainage systems, reduction of future deterioration of surface and subsurface drainage infrastructure, annual inspections, maintenance, and protection of the improvement in perpetuity. Factors unfavorable to the improvement: temporary land use disruption during construction, cost of construction and maintenance may be a burden to some landowners, removal of existing trees and brush in improvement area. Benefits versus cost. Assessments for property within the watershed are calculated based on the benefits derived. A publication by the Ohio State University Extension titled Returns to Farm Drainage details several studies conducted by Ohio State researchers on the effects of drainage on crop yields. The studies show that fields with good drainage will produce higher yields than fields that have poor drainage. A recently completed 25-year study showed that subsurface drainage increased corn yields by 24% to 39% and increased soybean yields by 13% to 46%. The same study also analyzed the return on investment for installing subsurface drainage in a field. It is found that for corn, $4 is returned for every $1 invested, and for soybeans, $3 is returned for every $1 invested. To state it generally, the benefits of drainage will equal the increased yield multiplied by the market price. The increased value or benefit for residential properties is much more subjective and difficult to quantify. For residential properties, the lack of an adequate drainage outlet can negatively impact the condition of household sewage treatment systems, potentially limiting the value of the home for resale. Should the existing system fail, the cost to perform repairs or construct an alternate sewage treatment system can range from the thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. It would also be reasonable to consider the cost of environmental degradation due to residential sewage treatment systems that may not be functioning properly. Other benefits that are commonly perceived as a result of drainage improvements focus on quality of life and positive neighborhood perception. Communities that have planned and maintained stormwater drainage infrastructures generally have higher resale values than those communities that are known to have a history of drainage problems or flooding. Conclusions. Based on all of the information gathered and generated for this project, I believe this project is technically feasible and would adequately serve the project area's drainage needs. However, the testimony brought to the board by the landowners as to whether the benefits of this project exceed the costs should be given significant consideration in the decision to move forward with this project. Should the current petition be approved to proceed to a final hearing, the petition bond will be returned and detailed plans, specifications, estimated costs, and a schedule of assessments would be prepared. Additionally, a benefit versus cost analysis will also be performed to further determine the feasibility of advancing this proposed project.
Thank you, Brett. Before we ask questions of the board, I failed to introduce everyone just for the benefit of the audience. I'm Commissioner Gary Merrill. To my left is Commissioner Bart Lewis. To our right is Commissioner Jeff Benton. Our staff attorney, Eric Kostetler, is with us today as well as our clerks, Jennifer Walraven and Sarah DeNova. So Okay. With that, is there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question right off, Brett. What is the difference between option one and option two? the east
Yes,
and
I
west
had that
options?
too.
I kind of
Figured you'd
anticipated that
expect that question.
might be asked.
Yeah.
So most of our projects, the vast majority, it's very easy to identify, I'll say the low or the flow path of which way water is trying to go, where the topography suggests that the drainage is, I'll say, most efficiently routed. The upper part of this watershed is extremely flat. There are significant areas of woods that, I'll say, limit the ability of our automated tools to point those factors out to us. So there's a couple different routes that we've been able to identify just based on our initial observations that could be the best place for the drainage to be routed. It's impossible to know if I'm certain that one of those is technically feasible. I will say that unequivocally. Which one or which one is best is hard. It's just impossible to determine without the field survey, without actually putting our boots on the ground and doing the work that we would do after this stage, in the survey and engineering phase of a project. The cost difference that you see between the two really accounts for the west option. I think preliminarily we think that there's an opportunity to do maybe more surface swailing, in a smaller tile size. The west option, kind of more through the wooded area, I think there's less of at least preliminary would say less of an opportunity to deal with drainage through our traditional surface drainage and tile design, and thus that means the tile needs to be bigger. It needs to be sized to account for surface drainage entering it. So
It looks like the east option was longer as well.
I think lengthwise they're probably about negligible difference. They both end up in the same point. It's just which route they take to get there, and again, it's just one of those cases where until we can actually survey it and profile it, we just wouldn't be able to really say. I can say the west option would be the least cost option. Whether it's technically feasible, though, I can't, and I didn't think as we talked about this project, we felt like to be as open and transparent. We wanted to present both options in this first hearing phase, so that what we were going to examine or what we intended to take a look at was out there for everybody to see.
So if we do go to a final hearing, you would have a recommended approach?
Yes. Yes.
Recommended option.
We would we would pick one, we, as part of our engineering, our charge, you hear us say it a lot, is to come back with the best least cost alternative.
Okay.
We've got to make sure that best least cost alternative is technically feasible. But yes, we're not asking you to pick or decide one of these. We'll take a look at both, and if we would come, if you direct us to proceed, when we come back for that final hearing, it will be one or the other.
There's no chance you're moving back recommending both. It's going to be one.
No, it would be one or the other.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
Yeah.
So it would be one or the other option?
Yes.
Not
We're
both?
going to take a look at both and
Uh-huh.
evaluate them. Obviously, I think if we determine the west option is technically feasible, then that's the best least cost alternative. If through our survey and engineering, we decide that, we just can't do this for whatever reason, but the elevations don't work out and the east option would be the best, then we would come back with that because it would then be the best least cost alternative.
So what you're saying is if we go to the second hearing, we'd have to include both?
No. I'm not asking you to direct us to look at one.
I mean, you would need, we wouldn't just say, okay, do the east option in the first,
No,
in
that's
this
correct.
hearing?
You're correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
What
Yes.
Brett's saying,
We'd say both. I mean, you would have to look at both as a whole.
Yes.
what you're
Okay.
saying is you'll come back with the best option to drain the watershed.
Yep, meet the request of the petitioners.
And that would be the one you'd be coming back with, should we move that direction.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay.
And you would make sure that that area is being served properly, whichever option you take.
correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Okay. Then we're going to, first of all, do we have any letters or anything that we Need to acknowledge?
We did receive a letter from Joyce Witten opposing the project.
Okay. That's
That is it.
Okay, and I believe we have that letter. With that, we will move into the testimony, and again, I will be swearing you in, and we'll start with those who are in favor of the petition. And once we get through that, then it will transition to those who are opposed to the petition, and then we'll kind of go back and forth as appropriate. So I will open it up, and when you come forward, I'd ask you, give your name, if you can, the lot number. It helps us identify where you are as you speak, so we kind of know how it impacts you, and your address. And then I will swear you in. So with that, is there anyone here who wants to speak in favor of the petition? So, well, one stood up and one raised his hand. He stood up first, so we're going to go with you.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Josh Carty with the law firm of Dinsmore and Scholl. My address is 191 West Nationwide Boulevard, Suite 300, Columbus, 43215.
And you're apparently speaking in behalf of the landowner.
That is correct.
Could you identify the landowner?
Sure. First, I want to thank the Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner.
I've got to swear
Merrill.
you in, but could you identify the landowner?
Sure. Landowners are Jim and Cindy McNeilis, Lot 55.
And his name again?
Jim?
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Good morning, and thank you, Commissioners Merrill, Lewis, and Benton. As I mentioned, my name is Josh Carty, and I represent Jim and Cindy McNeilis, the original petitioners for the Evans 354 Drainage Improvement Petition. Mr. and Mrs. McNeilis live at Lot 5, depicted on the map. The petitioners, in a nutshell, filed their petition because they are interested in one thing, and that is a comprehensive drainage plan for the entire watershed, and one that is approved by the county and implemented by the county. It's the petitioner's understanding that the Evans watershed has not benefited from a comprehensive maintenance plan in modern times, and some of the improvements and tile in the watershed are well over 100 years old. Everyone understands this is old farmland. Of course, there is still farmland in the watershed, but historically this meant that actions by individual property owners to address water flow issues on their property may not have significantly impacted other property owners in the watershed. Now, residential development has necessitated an updated approach to water flow management in the watershed. An approach that is overseen by experts from the county and one that provides a comprehensive solution to the water flow issues in the watershed. The petitioners constructed their home on Lot 55 and moved there during the summer of 2020. They followed every recommendation and requirement that the Delaware Soil and Water Conservation District gave them, and they have not implemented any quick fixes on the property of their own. Everything they have done that could impact the water flow has been approved by the Conservation District. The petitioners filed the current petition at the suggestion of the Conservation District. And the petitioners were also motivated by a man-made obstruction at the edge of Lot 22, which borders their property at Lot 55, which has impeded the water flow downstream and caused the backup of surface water onto their property for more than a year. Now, the petitioners are not interested in arguing about what any individual property owner's attempts at managing the water flow on his or her property have done at this ditch petition hearing. All the petitioners are asking for is the commission to please consider all the evidence given here today and to move forward with a comprehensive drainage improvement plan that addresses the more systemic issues in the Evans number 354 watershed. Under Ohio law, it is only the county commission that has the power to implement such a global solution. Mr. McNeilis, the original petitioner, will be testifying today in support of the petition, as will Matt Gramza, a certified professional engineer. Mr. Gramza was retained specifically by the petitioners to provide testimony during this hearing in support of the petition. With that, petitioners would respectfully request, after the hearing of all the evidence, that the commissioners approve of proceeding to a second and final hearing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I just want to add that the engineer is allowed to speak since he is a representative, paid representative of the landowner, and that does allow him to speak. And just for the record, so everybody knows that. Okay, with that, who else would like to speak in behalf?
I would like to speak.
Come forward.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Jim McNeilis. My wife Cindy.
Direct your questions to the
Yeah.
commissioners, please.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm Jim McNeilis. My wife Cindy is in the audience. We filed the ditch petition that brings us here today.
Okay, your address
I'm at 14913 Fancher Road.
and your lot number,
We are lot number 55 on the improvement petition.
so that the attorney just spoke on your behalf.
Yes,
Okay, if you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
We filed the ditch petition that brought us here today. My wife Cindy and I filed the petition at the recommendation of Delaware Soil and Water to ask the county to design, construct, and manage surface and subsurface water drainage in the watershed. When Cindy and I decided to build our home in the Evans 354 watershed, which is absolutely beautiful, we worked closely with Delaware Soil and Water. The folks from Delaware Soil and Water were very helpful, and after listening to Brett Bacon in his presentation, it's clear to see why we followed all of his recommendations. With their expertise and guidance, a comprehensive drainage plan was put in place for our property, and the building of our new home was implemented. We replaced a large section of the existing old Evans 354 subsurface drainage tile, excavated drainage swales that are appropriately sized and positioned, and hired an engineering company to right-size the box culvert that spans the east-west tributary. It cost a lot of money, but we followed all of the recommendations from Delaware Soil and Water. A drainage system was designed that would not block the flow of water from our upstream neighbors or increase the water flow to our downstream neighbors, in addition to protecting our house. Our drainage plan was approved by Delaware Soil and Water in advance of our construction. We were in constant communication during construction, and Delaware Soil and Water signed off on the property drainage after construction was completed. Since then, we have not made any changes to the approved drainage over the past year since moving into our house. Despite what was done with our property, it appears that there are still significant issues with both surface and subsurface water drainage throughout the watershed, which I think could be expected from 100-year-old water plan. Some of these issues are probably due to increased rainfall, leading to increased water volume, but some are self-inflicted by individual property owners. The watershed currently has no overall drainage plan, but instead has involved individual property owners with their own ideas of what constitutes good drainage for their property. Unfortunately, the actions of some individual property owners have worsened the drainage for the overall watershed. As you may be aware, Cindy and I are currently engaged in a lawsuit. Unfortunately, we were forced to sue our neighbors to the immediate west of our property after they built and then refused to remove an earthen dam along our property line. The earthen dam essentially blocks the Rocky Fork Creek tributary that drains the watershed and flows across their property. Their earthen dam blocks and backs up surface drainage from over 130 acres in the watershed, which drains all the way from Robbins Road to the north. Interestingly, the Fancher Road Rocky Fork drainage ditch the tributary creek drains into is only a few hundred feet downstream from the earthen dam. Obviously, a dam blocking surface water drainage from the watershed is not a good solution. Delaware Soil and Water has already testified in the lawsuit that building a dam or otherwise obstructing the flow of surface water is not the right thing to do. the court has ordered our neighbor to stop building the dam. And it's logical to expect the court will eventually rule that our neighbor should not have built the dam, obstructing the flow of water and backing it up onto our property. I was surprised to learn that I needed to file a lawsuit. I have no doubt that if they had the legal power, Delaware Soil and Water would not have permitted the earthen dam to be built. Unfortunately, it appears that although Delaware Soil and Water has some authority during a home building process, once construction is completed and they have signed off, there is no mechanism for them to compel a property owner to fix drainage problems on private property. We are not the only property owners in the watershed with drainage problems. And it seems unfair and inefficient for landowners to be required to go to court to stop people from building dams or otherwise degrading their drainage. I expect this will only get worse with the increased rainfall and as more families move into the watershed. Given the known drainage problems in the watershed, DSW recommended to my wife and I that we file a ditch petition, which we did. So here we are. We are seeking a solution to the significant drainage issues in the watershed. That's it.
Thank you.
Is anyone else who'd like to speak in favor? I believe we already have somebody coming forward for that purpose. Your name?
My name is Matt Gramza. I'm a water resource engineer with Civil and Environmental Consultants, 5899 Montclair Boulevard, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45150.
Just a second. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And I'll restate, because he's an engineer being paid to represent or do an analysis for this property owner, he is permitted to speak. With that, you can proceed.
Good morning. Could we have the presentation up? Thank you. So as Josh and Jim mentioned, we've been retained by the original petitioner to help support their case and show evidence to the drainage problems that they're experiencing and help them through the process of potential improvements. So my talk hopefully will be brief today for you, but we'll go over the petitioner location as a reminder. We'll talk about the problem, drainage obstructions, and then go into a little bit of our hydraulic impact study, what was involved, which included a detailed topographic survey of the immediate area for the study and a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis. And then a hydraulic impact study report results will complete with. So again, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but the petitioner location, as you mentioned, it is parcel 55 on the current map. The previous version of the map that showed the entire watershed actually had them as parcel 54. But as you mentioned, 55 is the current one in the report. And that's 14913 Fancher Road, shown here in the near the center of the watershed. This is a blow up of aerial photograph of their parcel, and these are some of the key features of the study, including the existing swale from the north, tributary to Rocky Fork, the existing east swale, which includes the box culvert that Jim mentioned for their driveway crossing, The approximate location of the earth and fill embankment dam at the property line, which is at the downstream end of the drainage, natural drainage way. Just downstream of there, also included in the study, is the location of the 42-inch concrete culvert for another drive crossing, and then downstream from there, two 10-inch corrugated metal pipe culverts for another drive crossing. So some photographs of the drainage obstructions. These photographs were taken by the property owner in, I believe, mid-2020. You can see a significant amount of earth and fill being dumped along the property line there in the natural drainage way, blocking the flow path as it had existed. And this is about 6 months later, looking at the results of that water being backed up into what normally is a ephemeral stream or seasonal stream, where it really only is normally wet during an actual rain event. Normally it had been dry. Now you can see on the left photo quite a bit of width on the channel and a lot of algae growing along the channel and along the banks due to the stagnant water. In addition, you'll see a lot of aquatic vegetation coming up, cattails and such, representative of standing water. The photograph on the right is the channel near the property line. That's just downstream of where the north channel and the east channel converge. And you can see a pretty substantial channel width and no recent rain event when these photos were taken. About 6 months later, so this is mid-2021, continue to see the growth of that channel in width and depth and additional aquatic vegetation growth. Supersaturated soils adjacent to the banks to the detriment of any mowing activities, in addition to the other issues that Jim and Cindy had mentioned, and we'll get into some of those based on our opinions here from the report. So, I apologize. This is the impact study watershed that we looked at, so it's specific to the surface runoff that's coming from their portion of the watershed. As Jim mentioned, it equates to a little over 130 acres that drains, directly into their property. These are the two delineated subbasins that were part of our hydrologic study. It's approximately 54 acres on the north basin, and I believe it's 74 or so on the east basin. Both, again, were studied combined to generate a precipitation runoff model to feed the tributaries running through the properties so they could be studied hydraulically. So these are some snapshots of the hydraulic model, which was performed in industry standard U.S. Army Corps Hydrologic Engineering Center River Analysis System, or HEC-RAS. The map, inundation map on the left, is for about a 1.25-inch rainfall event in a 24-hour period. It is approximately considered a bankful event, meaning at its peak, the flow would just fill up the top of the channel without overtopping in a normal drainage way. One thing that, and this is during the peak of that event, so this is the max water surface from that 1.25-inch event. You can see, natural drainage coming through the McNeilis property in the two channels, and then as it travels downstream, the flow gets interrupted and spreads out because it doesn't have a natural drainage way. The image on the left is the comparative study pre-fill condition along the property line. So that's as if we dialed the clock back, a little over a year to before that fill and earthen dam went in. The image on the right is post-fill conditions. So the image on the right are conditions as of when we did our topographic survey this year to develop the terrain for the model. So all these images you'll see on the left is pre-fill, on the right is post-fill. This is a shot 12 hours after the storm. On the left, pre-fill conditions, you can see the channels are draining out and nearly in a dry condition for the east tributary. The north tributary does still have water in it, but it is draining out. On the right, it shows the water backing up due to the obstruction in the natural drainage way, and that's where you're starting to get that stagnant water condition that would normally, again, have drained out. This is the same scenario, but 24 hours after the storm. So you can see in the post-fill condition, the water continues to back up, more so than in the pre-fill condition. So this is an animation of the a simulation of the drainage study. On the left, again, is pre-fill conditions. So the 1 1/4 inch rainfall comes in from the watershed, travels through the north channel and the east channel, and then drains out. The animation on the right is post-fill conditions, and again, you can see it right there as at the peak of the storm where the drainage patterns so interrupted that it really has nowhere to go and spreads out and backs up onto the McNeil's property. These inundation maps are from a simulated 100-year storm event based again on the 130 approximate acres of the hydrology study. So on the left is pre-fill conditions, on the right is post-fill conditions. Similar in inundation limits at the 100-year event because the obstructions do eventually get overtopped, but the impacts are still very, very apparent from the length of time that it takes for the drainage to get out and the backwater conditions. So these are, again, comparative snapshots on the left, pre-fill, on the right, post-fill. This is 12 hours after the 100-year simulated storm. This is 24 hours after the simulated storm. And you can see the water backing up again and maintaining for a much, much longer duration with the post-fill condition. So this is an animation of the 100-year flood event. Again, pre-fill condition on the left. So the first animation is pre-fill condition. And then on the right, post-fill condition. One note to make that Jim mentioned, working with Soil and Water on sizing his, driveway box culvert appropriately. You can see definitely in the bank full conditions, and then in the 100-year up until the peak of the flow, it is passing the storms quite easily through the structure and not creating additional backwater, but downstream where the structures are much smaller, they're not able to handle those storms and creating the large and wide floodplain type activity that you're seeing just downstream. So some of the results from the report, these are excerpts from our expert report, but this is a depth map. Again, comparative on the left is pre-fill, on the right is post-fill. And you can see at the property line with heat mapping shown, there's quite a bit more water. The depths are increased in the post-fill condition. So this is again a snapshot. This was of the Bankful peak flood event. So this is at the peak of that 1 1/4 inch rainfall. These are the maximum depths that we're seeing. They ranged in the 2 to 3 foot range. So to conclude, from our hydraulic impact study, some of the opinions generated from the study. So on the McNeilis property, the depth of the stormwater runoff during smaller, more frequent storm events increased after the placement of the earthen fill or dam in the downstream drainage swale on average by approximately 25%. The extent of time the property experienced flooding following a rain event increased on average by approximately 300% due to the placement of the earthen fill in the downstream drainage swale. The passage of the 100-year or 1% annual chance frequency storm is impacted with a rise in base flood elevation by approximately 0.5 feet due to the earthen fill in the downstream drainage swale, and that's significant. The McNeilis property gravel driveway and concrete box culvert are under increased potential for erosion scour and settlement, which could cause structural damage to the culvert and foundation systems due to the placement of the earthen fill in the downstream drainage swale. And that's due to the extended period of time that the founding soils are saturated for that structure, which were not intended that way. And then the undersized 42-inch culvert crossing on the downstream property is creating a backwater condition that affects the McNeilis property. The McNeilis property 12-foot clear span culvert crossing is appropriately sized according to the hydraulic modeling. Culvert sizing typically increases as you move downstream due to more drainage area being added. And then rainfall intensities and annual amounts have increased within the watershed and across the region in the past few years. And while the future is uncertain, the long-term forecast suggests that these trends will continue, and therefore the earthen fill in the downstream drainage swale will continue to negatively impact the McNeilis property. Any questions from the board?
Any questions? I have none.
No,
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak in favor, please come forward. Your name?
My name is Ryan King. I own parcel 47. It's 15010 Robbins Road.
150.
10, yes, sir.
And parcel 47.
Correct.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Proceed.
I didn't bring the PowerPoint, but I do have hard copies I'd like to present.
You can give it to the clerk.
My concern is really just the ponding on my property, which is what I presented in the bound material. I've approached the Soil and Water Conservation Officer to try to get this resolved, and really it seems like the solution is a new outlet.
You're on the far north.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned, I joined the petition. I did the amendment in August. Yes, the first page just shows aerial that you can see the kill off of all the vegetation just from standing water. And then the second picture, you can see where that water crosses our driveway. It's just been compressing down and settling into the earth. The second page is just two pictures from a single rainfall we had mid-July. of this year. And it just shows that the water stands, essentially has nowhere to go, which we've been on our property for 6 years now. And when we first moved in, it seemed like it would flow okay, but I don't know if tiles have collapsed or if the building, construction in the area has affected it, but that's why I'm here today, is we have the standing water almost year-round. That's actually the last page in the document here shows this was spring and into summer of 2020, where we had standing water that turned stagnant, and we had issues with unmanageable mosquitoes and just stagnant water, all the negative side effects from that.
Now, is it your testimony that this is worse than it was a few years ago, or is it about the same?
It's worse.
Do you have any water in your basement?
We have had water in the basement. What we've done is we've added a second sump pump and a second sump pump outlet, because during a big rain, a single sump pump with an 1.5 inch drain just couldn't keep up. So we now have two.
Okay.
So I got a question maybe for Brett. Since you're at the northern end of the watershed drainage, is there a problem beyond the watershed drainage that's causing the backup in this parcel?
Are you meaning something upstream, or I'm a little unclear of the question?
Well, this, and again, maybe I misunderstood, but the water flow, which way does the water flow?
Should be flowing from Mr. King's property to the south.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe, yeah, okay, never mind then.
While you're there, I have, sorry.
Go ahead.
While you're there, assuming we were to move forward, does this solve his drainage issue, the water standing in
I
his
guess that's
yard?
maybe where I was headed. Is there,
Yeah, that would be the intent, to design a project that meets the request of the petitioner. So yes, any engineering plans we would come back would look at addressing the ponding that is experienced on this parcel.
so he's at the highest point of the watershed?
He
is
would be
another
at
way of saying-
the upstream end, yes,
Upstream.
yeah.
End of the, okay.
Other questions? I'm going to make, Brett, stay there for a second, sorry. I'm making an assumption, the issue that he has really not related to the dam, of the obstruction, it's probably more generic what we normally see.
Yes, I would agree with that preliminarily without, obviously the benefit of survey, but that parcel would appear to me to be far enough upstream in the watershed, would not be affected by the placement of the fill in the water course. More than likely a result of just that lack of uniform surface grading or functional tile from that property to the good and sufficient outlet.
To confirm what I thought was the case.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Mr. King, I think you said that you experienced ponding, wet yard most of the year, so it really never really dries out?
Yeah, the rain we had on Monday, Tuesday, we had standing water on both sides of the driveway from that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan, appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Two other quick, okay. Anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of the petition? One more time, anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the petition? With that, we'll move to those who are opposed to the petition. So if you raise your hand, I will recognize you. Who would like to speak in opposition to the petition? Come forward.
Warner Mackey,
Warren?
Warner, W-A-R-N-E-R, 26. I've lived there for around 40
Okay,
years.
wait just a second. And your address, sir?
15131 Fancy Road.
And I'm going to swear you in, okay?
Pardon?
I'm going to swear you in.
Yes.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Proceed.
I've lived there for, I don't know, around 40 years. I've watched this water run for 40 years. And I know everybody has water problems. I have water problems. The water comes up in my driveway, lays in the yard. It takes several hours after a heavy rain, 4 or 5 inches of rain. Sometimes it takes days to run down. I've looked over around Evans Road, the same thing. I've looked all around and I've watched it. And that little creek down there, Rocky Fork, is at its limit right now. And if you put a drainage system all the way up through there, I know it's the same water, but several days, most of that water saturates into the ground and runs out real slow. If you put a drainage system up through here, whether it's a ravine or whatever it might be, you're going to put that water quickly down into this stream. And it's going to push the water out of Rocky Fork into the other people's yard on downstream. And it's already to the top. And most of them people down there have 2 sump pumps running in some of their houses, the new houses. You know, this water running through 55, it's been running through there for hundreds of years. And the whole thing boils down to, if you don't want water in your yard, don't build your house where the water runs. That's about all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment since I filed?
Not right now, no. You'll get a chance after we get through the minutes, okay? Okay, who else, if anyone would like to speak in opposition? Come forward. Your name, address, and lot number.
Oh, I'm Russ Stewart. I'm lot 22. Actually, I better check this out. Yes, lot 22.
22?
22.
Okay, you're the gentleman with the obstruction, and at least a testimony to that effect.
Yes.
And you give me your name again, I did not write it down.
Russ Stewart,
Russ Stewart, okay?
14859 Fancher Road.
If you'll raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah, I do.
Proceed.
Okay, I'm not going to get into all the legal stuff about the so-called dam. There's no dam. The court's already said they're already going through this whole thing. I'll deal with that in the court. The channeling of the water around what Soil and Drains had Lot 55 do, they converted the water to a different angle onto my property. That area right there has always been farmland. Water's always ran through. When we get heavy, heavy rain, it always floods. There's nothing there's nothing, even all the stuff you guys would like to do in channeling this water, you just go speed it up, cause more damage. When Soil and Drain, or Soil and Water had Lot 55 channeled that water, it sped it up. All it's doing is eroding my property. I have dropped, several inches, in erosion. I'm not allowed to clean up anything through there due to the court. I was never put anything in front of the channel that they dug. The only thing I put was dirt on the side. If you dig a ditch, you have sides. Water runs through. They dug below grade and dammed themselves. I have pictures to show it, all the proof's there. That's the only reason they're holding water. They dug a foot below grade. I can't fix that. I offered to fix that. I offered to put drainage tile through there. No, don't want it. Don't want it on their property. The only problem is if it's not on their property, how's it gonna drain? because, again, they dug below grade. So the water is not backing up. I still have water flowing across my property 24/7, all year round. The problem is every time Delaware gives out these building permits, all these contractors destroy all the old farm tile. They don't replace it. They never do. There's no law having them replace it. So that water backs up, comes above, back to the surface, and we have flooding problems. All we have to do is just fix these field tiles. Fix all the stuff that's going into that. I put one in the middle of my field, we're at the corner of it, water drains so fast. I mean, I've been trying to get it done because it kept blowing out. I'd fix it, it'd blow out. Finally, my neighbor told me, here, we'll put a surface drain on top. Hasn't blown out, it's been working fine. People have standing water, tile it. I have some in my own yard. I sit there, just put little surface tiles. You can see the little lid on top of the grass, drains away, it's gone. Heavy rain, you're gonna back up. I don't care it's gonna back up. But it drains a lot faster if we just fix all these little tiles and get this water out of there.
So you have pictures?
Yes, I don't have them with me because I didn't know I was gonna, but I can get them all printed up and, yeah. I mean, if you'd like to see them, I have them on my phone, I can show them to you later. It'd just take too much time to pull them on, but no,
Okay, anything else?
that would be it.
Thank you, sir.
Hey,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak in opposition to the petition? Come forward. Your name?
Ben White.
Ben, I did not get your last name.
White.
White, okay. Your lot number?
50.
50?
50, yep.
Okay, looked like you were hesitating.
Sorry, I was just checking.
Didn't want to confirm if we had the right one, your address.
14862 Fancher Road.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I did.
Proceed.
I didn't really know what this meeting was about, so I didn't have a carefully prepared testimony or anything, but I just wanted to say that I strongly oppose this idea, this petition, for a number of reasons. I don't think it's fair that what seems like a personal vendetta from Lot 55, that everybody else in this watershed should be asked to pay for this. So I live opposite Russ, who's just spoken, and what he said is true. There's no dam there. There just isn't. Also, my parents live on Lot 40, which they're not here, they're elderly. But this drain will obviously cause a lot of damage to their property. It'll devalue the property, and water flows through their yard. It always has done. They've been there a long time, and they don't have a problem with that. And I think, as Russ said, this will just speed it up and cause more erosion and unnecessary expense, devalue the property. Those of us that have lived in the country for a long time understand that if you have 5 or 6 acres in the country, you're going to have water in your yard a few times a year, and we don't have a problem with that. Like I say, I don't really have a carefully prepared testimony, but I wanted to say that I oppose this strongly, and my parents do too. I know I can't speak for them, but I didn't know that they had to have an attorney or whatever else. I would have brought one with me.
Yeah, you can't speak for them, but you can yourself.
Correct.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition to the petition? Okay. Mr. Singer, you're here representing the township. Did you want to say anything or not?
Yes, I'm not.
I can't, I realize we've done pro and con. I don't know what your comments are, but if you'll come forward. I'll swear you.
Bob Singer, 10555 Center Village Road.
Okay, we'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
A lot of the folks in this area have lived there 10, 20, 30 years. And as this gentleman indicated, water, does flow in our township. As trustee, we get calls a number of times a year. Couple things. One is that, as indicated, this is a civil matter to a great degree. The soil engineer actually indicated, I think in 3 of his situations, that it was a dam that was creating a major part of the problem. And that is in the courts. It hasn't been resolved. And so, my thoughts are, before this were to proceed, that maybe should be resolved. The other thing is, there are a number of farms in this area, and there's going to be considerable more development over time. So if Soil and Water creates a, quote, fix, at this point, it's based on the existing structures that are in place. What's going to happen? I mean, this is Fancher Road where the sewer is designed to come up. What's going to happen when you have a development in this area? Are we going to revisit the entire situation and then come up with a new plan? So I guess my thoughts, I feel at this point, if something could be done by the neighbors in a manner that is amenable to all, would be the best solution, as opposed to asking 61 property owners or 60 to go into this.
Thank you. Any question for trustee Singer?
Thank you.
No.
Mr. McNeilis, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you raised your hand, I said you need to wait. If you want to come forward now, do you still have a comment or not?
I'm going to speak.
You're going to speak?
Yes.
Come on up. I assume you also live at 55?
Yes, Cindy McNeilis.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
I just wanted to rebut a couple of statements that were made that no one replaces tile. We replaced a very large portion of the Evans 354 that we ran into in construction. Wasn't a surprise. We knew it was there. We knew we were going to have to make changes, so that's when we contacted Delaware Soil and Water, and we rerouted the drainage. End of story. So in terms of if you don't want to build your house, if you don't want water, don't build your house there. We made all the appropriate, we took all the appropriate actions to mitigate that. This is not a personal vendetta. Who would imagine that you move into your house and your neighbor builds a dam, which in fact is a dam? You all saw the pictures. It's not difficult. It's not a trench, and it doesn't have 2 sides to it. It is a dam. And I, in my wildest dreams, would have never thought that something like that would happen. So it's not a vendetta. It's about just getting the water to flow through like it's supposed to. And we're not the only people with the problem. And we don't have water a few times a year. We have water all the time. The pictures showed that. And when we were walking the property for a couple of years, that swale that you saw that had water that was in there constantly, there was never any water in there, ever. It looked like you were out in the middle of the Sahara Desert. There was nothing there. So that is all new complements of an earthen dam. So that's essentially it. I just wanted to clear the record, and we had pictures to show.
I do have a question while you're standing there. You,
Sure.
there was testimony given by Mr. Stewart, I believe, is that correct? That said you were unwilling, your
Yes.
property owner, one
Yes.
of the property owners, unwilling to, he was willing to help fix the problem, but if it required top drainage tile on your property, you were unwilling to allow that? Is that accurate or inaccurate?
It is completely inaccurate. It's, as you all know, we've heard about the court proceedings. It has been one of the most difficult things for me to sit by and watch somebody in sworn testimony not tell the truth. It's been so difficult. And that's why I came up. I wanted to set the record straight for what was said and what is the actual truth of the matter. We never, as a matter of fact, my husband asked him 3 times, can't we just resolve this? Take that down. And as you heard, it's like we're just making up the whole story, like it doesn't even exist. It's just magic. It exists. You saw it. And it has been there since April of 2020, I believe. So.
I have another question for you. Now, I'm not saying this is the solution, that's soil
Sure.
and water to say, but
Sure.
assuming that was the solution, you're willing to consider that?
Looking at the entire,
Could I add?
No, you can sit down, sir.
one of the issues that, I'm a registered nurse.
Uh-huh.
I don't talk engineering because I'm not an engineer. And it bothers me that a lot of people talk engineering and they don't really know anything about it at all. We deferred to the engineers because that's what they do.
I didn't say that was
Right,
the
right.
solution. I
It's
just
it's
said
their
if
profession.
that was the solution.
They've identified a much bigger problem. We're not the only ones having problems. I think
Okay.
in general, there are other issues upstream, but I think that it would benefit, there's even people to the east that are being affected by what's going on in our watershed. That's a whole different story. But I think there's a lot more problems than just us.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, you had something to say, is that still the case?
Yeah, you asked my wife if
Oh, come to the mic,
Yeah.
please talk.
considered,
Wait,
Yeah, speak.
now talk, okay.
Yeah.
you asked my wife if we had ever.
Reintroduce
Jim
yourself
McNeilus.
for the- Reintroduce yourself for the
I'm
record.
Jim McNeilus. I'm the one who
Okay, go ahead.
put forward the ditch petition. We're 14913 Fancher Road. And yes, we did. And we were in talking with Greg Lyman. Scott Humphreys joined the conversation at some point. Ben White joined the conversation at some point. Russ Stewart kind of stayed in the background of it. And the bigger issue was we were the only ones that wanted to involve Delaware Soil and Water. The fixes that were being proposed did not sound reasonable to me. And I think Dave Jackson is here as well. He's a Harlem trustee and I contacted him. He also recommended I put in a ditch petition. But some of the fixes that were being proposed wouldn't fix the problem. Wouldn't fix the water flow. It wouldn't help. And it was all about keeping a dam in place and then making some changes which were not part of our original plan. We had just installed the Delaware Soil and Water approved plan on our property, and it worked fine until April of 2020. My builder was still doing construction work, and Mr. Stewart and his son dumped dirt right in front of the swale on their side of the property line. My builder confronted him, contacted me, called Delaware Soil and Water, and Delaware Soil and Water came out, and unfortunately, there is no authority for them to do anything. Nobody could do anything. It's a civil matter. So we're pursuing the civil matter. We don't need to wait with poor drainage that's over 100 years old in the entire watershed for a lawsuit to be over with. That's between Russ and I and a dam. Would this benefit that? Yeah, if the county stepped in, fixed the watershed drainage, It would obviously get rid of the dam between my property and Russ's and make the water flow better. My wife and I, when we bought the property, we waited a couple of years just to kind of see what was going on. Dave continued to farm the area. In fact, we had to wait till the winter of 2019 to break ground so that Dave could actually get his crops out of the back 7 acres that he was farming on our side, just because of the increase in rainfall. So we've got increases in rainfall, over 100-year-old system of drainage, more houses, and it's a gorgeous area. People are building. Every day I drive by whenever I drive by Robbins Road or down Fancher, there seems to always be a new basement being dug. So this is going to build up. And we need to have a solution now before it becomes worse and real damage starts to happen to foundations, driveways. We're not talking just a little bit of water once in a while.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
There's a hand right here. And are you speaking for or against?
Can I be in the middle?
I hear that all the time, so that's not as usual. I still, even in the middle, I still need your name.
My name is Scott Humphreys,
Scott Humphrey.
and I own 2 lots. Sorry, get my glasses on. 42 and 41.
42 and 41. And your address?
4457 Green Cook Road.
Okay, if you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
So, I own 2 lots. I had formerly owned lot 24, and I had sold that off to Greg Lyman. So I'm quite familiar with that section of the proposed improvements. As Brett has mentioned, this is a very flat area. He actually walked the back part of that lot with me on the east option. That's pretty dense old growth woods in there. So to his point about the cost being higher, that's very likely to be true, because I would hate to see that area damaged by cutting swales and clear cutting trees, or even have to trim out trees to do it. At some point, a home will be built there, but it needs to respect the character of that land.
A home being built on 24?
42 eventually.
42.
I have not
42,
chosen
okay.
to sell it, and at this point, I have no immediate plans, but I subdivided those parcels to allow for the potential for that. So when we talk about the potential benefit, I definitely see a potential benefit to that lot in the future with improved drainage. That said, with my land, I can actually accommodate the water and drain it through my lots. So there's going to be, and until we have a very concrete proposal, it will be unclear whether the benefit outweighs the cost. We will have to see that when we look at the property values and how the cost of the project would weigh against that. So while I have some understanding there, on my current lot 41, where I actually reside today, I see very little benefit that will occur for that lot. That lot, we had engineering help to figure out the right elevation. We dug a pond to excavate dirt to build it up, and tried to follow all proper procedures in that. So while I would describe that I have water, I don't describe that I have a water problem. Right, water flows through there like the gentleman back here said, water has flowed through that area for years. The reason that area is all woods was because water flowed through there, right? And the farmers didn't clear cut it because it was a lower ground. So when I look at the benefits of these options, the one to the east worries me the most because of the potential damage it could do to the lots. Even though I appreciate the effort to get it up along the edge of the lot, the worry I would have is clear cutting trees, like on the back of my lot, that would damage views and destroy the privacy. So while I think that could be accommodated during build, it's something I want to make sure is noted, because that could affect the benefit of the project or reduce the benefit of the project in my view. I will also make another comment that water tables in that area are very high. About everybody I know has challenges with sump pumps, right? I have 2 sump pumps, an engineered system to keep it pumping out, to alternate. It's part and parcel of that area. That's probably is that the groundwater is saturated in that area. Would the drainage help? It might in time, I don't know. As my neighbors, one of the neighbors in front of me had once described, they put a straw down and sipped and they got water for their well. So the point is, this has been that way for a long time. The core problem you're finding is you have a lot of new development coming in. I'm one of those people. I can understand the benefit of it. I love the area. But there is some consideration of the people who build. They need to be engineering that as best they can to mitigate their issues without trying to impose the cost on all their neighbors. Because I have a lot of sympathy for all the farmers and other people around here who will not benefit but will be imposed a cost on by either of those routes that are being chosen. Those routes will affect very specific properties, and it will not benefit other properties in that watershed, and they will bear cost for that. So those were my main comments. I just wanted to, as I said, I'm kind of in the middle on this because there's potential benefit, which I don't know until specific plans are done. I can then work with someone to appraise the value and how it would affect my land value, and I would come back more at your second hearing with that information if it was pertinent to this. But that's all I had to say.
Just an observation, you said that at some point you'll sell 42 lot, but they could drain through your lot 41.
It could drain, yes.
Just a point, that doesn't solve the problem, just move the water downstream for someone else.
It solves the problem, but keep in mind, I don't bear.
Just making that observation.
No, it's a fair observation, but my point, and this was the question you'd asked the other, to Ryan, the water up here, by the time it flows down, there are woods that buffer. No matter what you do down here, I will have very little benefit up there because water's gonna flow. It's gonna go at a similar pace, right? And it's eventually gonna go downstream. We don't bear the immediate effect up there because we're far enough away from the outlet.
You understood my point?
I understood your point.
Thank you, sir. I know we're gonna need to have soil and water come back up, but we have one more case. Come on up, sir. For, against, or in the middle?
Well, I'd say oppose.
Opposed, okay.
That makes it better.
So if you give me your name?
Joe Triano.
I'm saying it, sir.
Joe Triano, and the number on me is 23.
23.
It's a farm field. I'm a farmer on it, and the owner.
Okay. Let me swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Okay. I've been there a long time, and I understand Ryan's problem there, because I'm taking on the water from up north there. It goes past Ryan, because I've got tiles that I've retiled this area here for years. I have not been able to farm this. The last 2 years I've had crops in it. What I've done is retiled and put underground tanks, water tanks, and if it gets too bad so I can farm during the spring, I'll come in there and shoot the water back into my woods. So, just so it dries it out. So I've done that. I've also put along the road, Scott Humphrey is my neighbor there, and I've dug a ditch along there, along his side and my side, on my side, 3 foot by 3 foot deep by 2 foot. Took backhoes and did that, my son and I. And it dries up during the summertime. 3 foot of water, and it's almost 4 foot. So it does dry up. So I do have that situation there. So I think all the tiling and stuff I've done has helped. Now, I can understand where Ryan's problem is. If he wants to take some tile and run it down and through, I've run into one of those tiles and they were completely plugged. And I told him it goes through his property too. So that's the situation he's running into because it's almost exactly where his water problem is. So, you know, I mean, he could do that or something like that. I mean, I'm willing to help him out in that area there if he needed to do that, being a neighbor. And I've already put enough tile in there, so I know what.
Was that to him before, or is this?
Pardon me?
Have you made that proposal to him before?
No, sir. I didn't know he had a problem until this situation came up. So, you know, I'm willing to help him out, do the best I can. But all I have to do is run a tile because he's north of me and his water comes down on me. So like I said, I've solved half the problem. I still got about a half acre I'm trying to figure out how to get, but it's not worthwhile because what the Soil and Water said about 4 to 1, for 1 acre of land, it's not worth it. I'm losing. So, but it was a challenge for me to fix that and try to do what I can. So I am willing to help him out, and I guess that's about it.
So let me ask, you are able to farm parcel 23 now?
Half of it.
Just the?
Well, no.
Half to
There's
the
only,
west?
if you look close to the woods, there's only an acre there that had a problem. The other 3 acres up there that you're looking, going up to the end of the lot 23, it has always, I've been able to farm that always.
You're not able.
That's not, so out of that 1 acre, I've got 1 acre, half of it fixed, where I got a crop in last year and this year. And so, yeah, so,
That's not all of it.
okay, that's all I need to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's you.
Joe made a very, sorry, this is Scott Humphries, just to make sure.
You already been sworn in.
So for the record, Joe is correct, that there's actually, and in dealing, because I've actually reached out to a number of neighbors after this came up, Ryan being one, Joe being another. I believe among neighbors, there would be some willingness to actually privately try to do stuff. I myself would be willing on my land with neighbors if agreements could be reached. The main problem that I have, and I've seen and know I've talked with an engineer, is an outlet. So that's one of the harder challenges. We don't want to end up solving the problem upstream and just push the water to the next neighbor, let's say to the farm next to me. You know, Fred Hendren had put in a swale through his farm. Well, I don't want to go dump water into him without appropriate understanding.
And that's one of the reasons we're here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good
So
discussion.
there is still the issue of the outlet would be my comment there. But there would be willingness of people to try to help.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I have some questions for Soil and Water. You expect that, don't you? Anyone else want to go first?
Yeah, I'll ask a couple of them
Okay.
here. What would happen, and I know Trustee Bob suggested it might be best if the litigation worked itself out, and then maybe the dam would be torn down. Is there any benefit if the dam is torn down in waiting for that litigation to play out?
I'm not going to wade into the legal side of things. I will reference back to our statement in the report that top to bottom, there's been a lack of comprehensive maintenance of the drainage infrastructure in this watershed. It's aged, it's unmaintained and overburdened. And the infrastructure as a general statement does not function as a good and sufficient outlet according to the current engineering standards. The dam obviously is a component of that, but it's just one component. You can remove the dam and there are still, in my opinion, significant issues in this watershed because of the age of the infrastructure and that lack of comprehensive maintenance. Whether the benefits exceed the costs or is this the time to fix that drainage, that's not an opinion. That's not my place to state that. That's the landowners to make their cases to whether the benefits exceed the cost. But I will unequivocally state that the drainage is not functioning as a good and sufficient outlet based on our current standards that we apply.
And I take it that you are saying that your statement would apply to the whole watershed?
Correct.
Here. Okay.
Correct.
So therefore, I know people testify, and it's hard, we've learned in these hearings, because you think it's just water on your land, and then if you fix that, that fixes everything. But what about that?
I think there are landowners in this watershed that have made good attempts at trying to apply fixes to their individual properties, but when our staff meets with a landowner, we get contacted about drainage complaints. One of the things that we will try to identify is, can this problem be meaningfully fixed by doing work on a single property? In a lot of cases, the answer to that is no. It requires work downstream. It requires that comprehensive look, top to bottom, the holistic approach to addressing the drainage concerns and fixing the drainage infrastructure. This infrastructure, as we stated in the report, was installed in 1912. Yes, there are individual landowners can make improvements. They can fix blowouts. They can, recut surface drainage, clean out open ditches. But there's never been, since that 1912 project, which was done under this process at that time, there's never been that comprehensive maintenance of the system, or repair of the system. So to bring the infrastructure to the point where it meets our current standards, that would be the approach that is needed.
Okay, thank you.
If we were to go forward with this and improve the flow, what impact would that have downstream outside the watershed?
Our experience is these projects do not change the watershed. The 300, and I'm going to miss my number here, are the 300 plus acres that are in the Evans number 354 now. That doesn't change. That peak flow, what people think of as the flood event, that's a function of how much rain we get and how the time frame that we get it in. Improving the drainage, the water that's left in the watershed, those ponded areas, getting those an avenue that they're able to drown out. It just does not drain out. I'm sorry, does not result in the impacts that people envision, that they think. The amount of water leaving the watershed now versus the amount of water that would leave a watershed like this post-project really is unchanged. I'll use I say a phrase to people a lot of the time: I've yet to do a drainage project that has made it rain more or less. And it's just so much of a function of how much rain we get and that time frame that it comes in.
So what's your impression of the impact of the dam on backup of water in this watershed?
I think the dam is resulting in water being ponded onto the neighboring property. Without surveying it into what degree, I can't answer that fully.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple, 3, 4, maybe 4 questions. The dam, we don't have the authority to remove that, I'm assuming, do we?
Only under this process.
Under this process, it could be removed?
Yes.
Without waiting for the court ruling?
Correct.
Okay. One of the questions upstream that was raised was concern on the east option, damaging to the trees. Is that a reasonable concern or not?
It is a reasonable concern and would definitely be an impact of the property. It would result in, obviously, we're going to have to pay a contractor to do that. So the more clearing that you would have to do to construct a project, the more expensive the project could be. It is, I will agree, more of an older growth forest. There's very large trees in there. Would be a significant cost to take them down, and then to mitigate that impact, we have the cost that we would have to pay a contractor, and obviously there's the cost to the landowner of losing the forested nature or a portion of that. That's why that option is proposed to not, its corridor of construction would be narrower, would not have that surface drainage component that we would be able to build into the other side. That would be our normal approach to.
So all things being relatively equal, you would choose the west option to avoid that problem?
Correct.
The question was, and I apologize, I can't remember who made the statement that Rocky Fork Creek runs full and we don't place for this water to go, but your feeling is, not testimony, your feeling is that water's gonna end up there anyway.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yes. If it rains a certain amount and Rocky Fork Creek rises to, we'll just use bank full for a point of reference, it will continue, it's going to do that now, it's going to do that, it has done that in the past, and it will continue to do that in the future, whether this project is constructed or not.
Yeah, I have actually another question. Good portion of this watershed is farmland. Maybe, I'm guessing 65% of it looks like just real rough guess, but are most of the farms in this area tiled?
I don't have those records.
Don't know.
I will say some are, for sure.
Another question?
Nope.
Again, somebody made the testimony, and I'm not gonna go back through my notes to find out who, that as more development occurs, it will really make what we do irrelevant. Your comment on that. And that's not the word they were used, but that was the point they were trying to make, your comment.
I would say that's inaccurate. We've done these projects for, over 20 years now, in what we would call the modern era. The projects are designed to handle the water that's coming from the watershed. If there is new development in the watershed, depending on the character of that development, they may have to meet the county engineer standards for retaining the water from that development. If it's larger lot, 5-acre lot development, the drainage is sized to accommodate that.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask you a question I always ask you. Based on what you've heard today, is this a project you would still recommend?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question of property number 22 and 55. The reason we asked the question to both of you is because I got a feeling I'll get two different answers. Is that reasonable? And I'll ask the question, one of you can come up at a time to respond to the question. The status of the lawsuit, is it anticipated to be resolved in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, or nobody knows? And I'm looking at you, so I'll let you come up first, okay?
How long this is going to go on? That's basically up to the court, and the way I look at it, if I win, he'll just appeal it and it's going to go on for years. So we don't know. Let's face it,
Thank you, sir.
the way this thing is. But again, the pictures that like they showed, and everyone wants to call it a dam, there's no dam. That was in the middle of a construction project. All that was removed. That was all wet soil from wet property being moved around. The water, they channeled the flow. It used to come from the east to the west, straight across. They took it at a different angle. The dirt was moved over here. There was never anything in front of that water. It was on the side to help push the water to the low point to keep it going. Why would I put anything in front of it? I want the water gone. I don't want it to be there. I don't want water on his property getting mosquitoes, because I have to get
You answered
mosquitoes.
my question, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Carty on behalf of the McNeilises. Commissioner Merrill, the trial is set for May 17th, 2022. Of course, depending on the outcome, it may go past that.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that the hearing be closed.
Resolution number 21-1053, in the matter of closing the public hearing for the consideration of the Evans number 354 drainage improvement petition filed by James and Cynthia McNeilis and others.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Lewis, second by Commissioner Benton. Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 21-1053. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that the clerk read the proceeding with a petition.
Resolution number 21-1054, in the matter proceeding with the petition for the Evans number 354 drainage improvement filed by James and Cynthia McNeilis and others, and ordering the Delaware County Engineer to proceed with the preparation of reports, plans, and schedules for the proposed improvement.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion? I'll go first. I'm not sure where I will look at this on the final hearing. I have reservations. But the point is, we'll have a much clearer look at that point than we have right now. I will support it, but the final hearing will be very important in my ultimate response on this. Frankly, I have reservations, but I don't have enough that I wouldn't support going to the second hearing. So with that, other comments?
Sure. We just need more information, and the only way we're going to get it, we had several questions that Soil and Water couldn't answer because they have to do additional study and research. And so we'll have number 2 hearing.
Yeah, I support it as well. This watershed clearly is in a deficient condition, and it's a big watershed, so it needs a lot of work. I wrestle with $200,000 to do this work. It seems like a big number. I don't know if that's realistic or not. We'll learn a lot more at the final hearing, but I rely extensively on Soil and Water's expertise in these matters, and they're clearly saying that this watershed needs maintenance, needs an overhaul and maintenance. So that's why I'm anxious to go forward and see how it plays out in the next hearing.
And I'll just add this, Soil and Water does a tremendous job, and their analysis is going to create a lot of ways to move forward. But I do think there's enough questions that we will be looking for answers for, and Brett's nodding back there, I think he understands that. And, but again, Soil and Water does a terrific job, and they will do a terrific job making the evaluation that we need to move forward. With that, call for the vote.
Vote on motion 21-1054. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your patience and understanding.
We're going to go back in executive.
Do we have something other than the appointments for executive, or is that it? Do you have something else?
Economic development.
Okay.
And employment,
And employment,
yeah.
Resolution number 21-1055, in the matter of adjourning into executive session for consideration of employment of a public employee or public official to consider the sale of property the sale of property, competitive bidding, and for economic development.
and employment.
And employment, I did say.
You said that?
Yes,
A little bit of noise here.
a little bit.
So moved.
Aye.
Motion made, Commissioner Bates, second, Commissioner Lewis. Vote.
Vote on motion 21-1055. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.